Right now on Denver 7 News, Aurora Police Chief Vanessa Wilson has been fired. We have the latest on her termination and what's next for Colorado's third largest city.
Well, it may feel like your cold is lasting longer after 2 years of masking and social distancing. We're getting answers if being too germ-free has actually weakened our immune systems. And as marijuana decriminalization gets new attention from Congress, more states and cities are considering changes around the rules. The debate around letting employees use marijuana outside of work.
And helping those with mental health issues stay out of jail and off the streets. Hear about Denver's new strategies to get them help. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Jason Grenauer. We want to start off with a major shakeup at the Aurora Police Department. At a news conference today, the city manager announced that Police Chief Vanessa Wilson has been fired. Let's get right over to Denver 7 investigative reporter Jennifer Kowaleski, who broke the story that the chief was being forced out weeks ago. And Jen, this whole situation has now turned political.
It certainly has. Pressure's been mounting on Chief Wilson for months. Now, we first reported that she was on her way out almost 2 weeks ago, and the city made it official today. Now, City Manager Jim Twomley said he terminated Wilson due to her lack of overall leadership and management of the police department. He said it was not because of the massive records backlog we reported on yesterday. More than 2,000 cases involving serious crimes, waiting in a queue, delaying investigations. Twomley said they fired Wilson as an at-will employee, and the city is ready to defend any lawsuits she may file. Chief Wilson does have an attorney. In a statement, she called the firing today a concerted effort by conservative members of the city council to smear Chief Wilson's reputation and credibility. The city manager said he was not pressured by council to make this decision.
She wasn't fired because of the records problem. It really comes down to a lack of confidence on my part for her to be able to lead the department.
Now, the city manager says that she did very well responding to crisis, but there is more to managing a police department than that. The city said it is paying Chief Wilson 12 months of her salary with full benefits. Jason?
Our Jennifer Kowaleski tonight. Of course, we will have much more about the firing of Chief Wilson coming up on Denver 7 News at 5 and 6. And don't forget, if you missed any of our reporting along the way of this long journey, make sure to visit our website, thedenverchannel.com, or download the free Denver 7 Plus app. A 17-year-old is facing an arson charge after police say they set 10 separate fires in Aurora. The fires were set in bushes, near buildings, a few dumpsters, and 2 different buildings in an apartment complex. All were set near Iliff and Peoria. One of those building fires displaced 10 people from 3 different units. Luckily, no one was hurt. Law enforcement and public health agencies say the increase in Denver's crime is partially linked to mental health issues. Today, several agencies explained their plans to address the problem with a presentation to Denver City Council. Some of those solutions include addressing illegal guns, recruiting and retaining police officers, and expanding behavioral health response programs. Around 20% of jail inmates are people with a mental health issue facing low-level charges. But when those people are released from jail, many aren't provided with the resources needed to make a change.
We really need to not just expand on these services, but we need to look at the quality of those services and get as much data as we can to adjust and make those interactions as useful as they can be.
One of the solutions is called the Assessment Intake Diversion Center, otherwise known as the AID Center. It's set to open this summer as an alternative to jail and a connection to resources. Announcing new sanctions against Russia. It's in an attempt to further isolate the Russian economy after the discovery of more atrocities committed by Russian troops. These latest sanctions are further targeting Russian banks and also several people close to the Kremlin, including Vladimir Putin's 2 daughters. The idea is to freeze any assets that Putin may be hiding with them. Now, President Biden is also sending another $100 million in Javelin anti-tank missiles to Ukrainian forces. This latest delivery means the U.S. has provided more than $1.7 billion in security assistance to Ukraine since Russia invaded.
A 6th extension of the pause on federal student loan payments is now official. This gives borrowers relief through the end of August. The president cited ongoing pandemic and economic hardship. Some had called for a longer extension through the end of the year in the midterm elections. The administration is reportedly still working on a plan to erase the debt some borrowers have who are in default. Now, we know that we'll be living with COVID in our lives in some form for a long time. And that means improving at-home testing is important. There's a team at Emory University that's been working with the federal government to evaluate COVID tests during the pandemic, and they're focused on what's coming next with the virus. And one thing that is in the works is a combo test for COVID and the flu.
That, you can imagine, would be really useful for people at home or somewhere else, because the symptoms might be very similar. And if you're in the winter, let's say next Christmas, and you're experiencing some form of cold symptoms, being able to differentiate COVID from flu from something else could be really helpful for knowing what you need to do, or even talking to your doctor about what treatments you might be offered.
Dr. Greg Martin is hopeful this test could be available by the start of next flu season. Now, another future advancement in testing is for you to know which variant you have when you test positive for COVID.
Ultimately, we're beginning to see some treatments work better with some variants than others. And so being able to differentiate the variant might become more and more important as time goes by, as variants begin to emerge.
Making at-home COVID tests cheaper and more available is something that doctors still want to see more of when you have symptoms that you can test yourself multiple times. Questions about privacy and who owns test data are coming up as well. Now, Dr. Wilbur Lamb says that home testing is here to stay, not just for COVID, but he sees it expanding to other diseases because of the new acceptance around it.
The most likely tests are the ones in which, if you're positive, there's something that the doctor will do, meaning perhaps give you a medication or have you come into the hospital or their clinic to check out.
He says diseases like cancer that require multiple types of tests to be diagnosed wouldn't work well for home tests, but monitoring certain aspects of cancer, looking for side effects, could be done at home.
I see what are called companion diagnostics making and really entering the foray at home. And what companion diagnostics are diagnostic tests that are coupled to a medication. So whereas a patient could therefore determine, based on the test, how well their drug is working or not working, and that could be something that they could work with their provider on.
The doctors have found in the pandemic the fastest tests available are ones based off already existing technologies. Now, pulling the veil back on abuse that you don't see on social media.
Direct messages are the digital dark alleys.
The prevalence of private message attacks and the change that advocates want to see.
Plus, we're just days away from opening day, and the Rockies are just about ready. We'll show you how Lodo is turning purple, plus the big name set to throw out the first pitch.